So we're going to start out with some very topical stuff. So obviously on the last episode when we had Dust, we did talk about the VCT NA quad challenges and we looked at the matchups, etc. Now, yes, I understand because initially I hadn't gotten the protocols down so I could release on the same day because we released like 3 days later. Yes, we all know it's hilarious that Gio and Dust were all like, there's no world where Luminosity wins this game. Version 1 are the best thing. Cloud9 is number 1. Yeah, we get all that. We get it. And it looked silly. Yes, I know that they'd all lost by the time we put the episode out and it all looked like ha 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 ha. But if anything, by the way, I actually think that is what you should do in analysis. If you really do think a team is better, you should say it. Because now when we talk about it now, Gio, we can use that context
Like, let's be honest, anybody who prior to the playoffs thought that Luminosity was going to be version 1 is a fucking liar. Like, you can make fun of the fact that we thought that Luminosity would lose to V1, but I still stand by that. I would have made that prediction again tomorrow if like, you know, I didn't know that it had happened. So,
So let's contrast it based on that.
Luminosity were going to be V1.
Exactly. So that actually highlights and emphasizes what a massive upset it was. So let's start with that. Like, how did this happen, Gio? Because obviously V1 was the team. Like, you had, like, I think V1 was second after Cloud9 when your little mini power ranking, right?
So there were some things about that game which I thought were really impressive from Luminosity. Like 2 big things. A, Luminosity were doing really well in their pistol rounds, and then the follow-up round as well. Their anti-ecos were very good as well. And obviously in any, I'm sure it's the same in Counter-Strike, but like in any game where you've got an economy to do well in those rounds is going to give you a really big
massive swing factor,
especially if you can get it on both sides, right? Like attack and defense. So I thought Luminosity were doing great in their pistols. I also think like if you want to look at individual players, B-Dog popped the fuck off. Holy shit. He absolutely went wild in that game. And there was also some really nice tech used by him. Particularly, I'm thinking like there was a round in their bind game where he was playing chamber. And on the B site, there's like a little cubby that usually gets cleared out by some kind of Molotov, especially if attackers want to be coming in through hookah and or through garden, like B long. And so they just need that angle to be cleared. And he was hiding in that little cubby. A snakebite comes in, tries to clear him out. Now, what usually happens, of course, is the player has to step out into the open and force themselves into the line of sight. But because he's playing chamber, he just puts his teleport right down at his feet, fucks off out of there without anyone knowing that he was there or risking himself. And I thought like that obviously a play in and of itself isn't going to win a game, but it's just little pieces of tech like that I thought was really cool. Luminosity is a team who I did mention in the last episode, in the first week, or week 5 or whatever it was, when NA started playing on the new patch, LG was one of these teams that like really lent into, okay, right, we're in a new patch, like let's just like full go at this new patch. We're just going to full send it. We're not going to bother hanging around with like Viper, Astra, whatever. And it didn't necessarily work out like to the way they wanted when they were playing against XSET. Like they didn't win that series, but they were very willing to go for those kinds of ideas. And it was the same thing in this game against version 1. Again, on this bind game, they didn't bring a Viper, and that was something that Sideshow, particularly on the broadcast, was, I don't want to say critical of, but he was skeptical. Like in the pre-game analysis, he was like, this is weird. Like this is not necessarily what we'd expect to see. And I agree. I think on bind, that's a big risk to take. But the fact that they're really leaning into these new ideas and fully like going for that, I think is a really big asset to Luminosity.
You pick, Peak. Which side of this do you want to talk? Do you want to talk about Luminosity? Do you talk about version 1? You hit me with it. What are you interested in?
I want to talk about both, because like on Bind, for example, you could see that Luminosity they had a Brimstone, but not the Omen that's more popular now, where you run Omen plus Brimstone so that you have the controlling smokes, but also fast executes. And instead they had a Sova, I believe. And when you skip the Viper, for example, you don't aim to play for this, like you don't bait out utility, you don't bait out the flashes or the drone or dog and so on. And I think that's one of the key things for Luminosity, but also that they won the pistol rounds and the buy round after the pistol, because doing that on attack is already 2 rounds. And then when you switch over to defense, you need 4 rounds at a minimum to have a really solid economy. And then getting the buy round, pistol round, buy round, bonus round on defense, you're setting yourself up for mega success. And you have the tempo, the tools for tempo plays with Brimstone, with the Sova and Raze, and especially Chamber as well, where you can use the teleporter to go aggressively and then teleport out. And we've seen teams like Optic even do that. And I can bring that up later, but then if we go for Fracture, we could see that version 1, they had an Astra, and Astra was nerfed, right? But LG or Luminosity, they're sitting there with the Omen only, and no real fast execute instead. So they have, I've got the page up here, they had Jet, KO, Killjoy, Omen, and Sova. And to me, I feel like a lot of these compositions where they have Omen plus Killjoy plus KO and Sova, well, Sova comes in general now in NA, they kind of copy each other a lot. And it's like all the NA teams are kind of handicapped without the Sova for gathering info. But because once you have the Omen, smokes are too slow to enter in. You need to basically use everything all at once, flashes, you need to smoke, and even then you still struggle. And at that point, there's no difference between using Omen to entry and everyone else compared to just Jet smoking, dashing into smoke, and then everyone comes in after. And they should have probably thought about using Brimstone over Omen there and had even more success. But then they also run the risk of losing mid control or just not making the enemies think where you are, basically, or have to worry about where you are. So I feel like Luminosity, if they would have a stronger execute, they would have rolled over version 1 in Ascent as well, and it would have been a 2-0.
Were you implying, by the way, sorry, just as a quick follow-up, were you implying that like the idea is that the version 1 was sort of like stuck in the old meta and they hadn't been as sort of embracing of like what the best agents are now? Is that what you were trying to sort of imply with the composition comparison?
Yeah, well, yeah, they were all in the old meta, but they still won the game, and I think they won it because of just being used to the old meta, and you just adapt a bit different and factor in the changes. But Luminosity, they didn't really have the same power, if that makes sense, because they have a new composition. You add in the creativity, but also the plays that kind of don't really make sense versus that Astra, and I feel like they didn't have the same power spikes, and that's why they ended up losing there. And good by version 1 to be in the old meta, but eventually you're gonna hit a roadblock where that doesn't really work anymore.
Okay.
I think personally, like when we're talking about Ascent, which is the second map that you're talking about where version 1 actually won, the real big difference that stood out to me that allowed version 1 to get ahead in that game was actually the Xel'Sys versus Martyr on the KOs, because I know I've been a bit critical of Martyr on KO in the past anyway, but I think Xel'Sys, particularly when version 1 were playing on defense, a lot of his utility was really, really good at holding back a lot of LG's engages. And I mean, even just when you look at like how and when he would use his fragments to cut off something like A main or B main or whatever, like it would actually have quite a significant interruption to what it was that LG were planning to do. But there were even other little plays by Xel'Sys that were just really nice. I mean, on I've literally got it written down, but round number 18 is the one where version 1 used their Cosmic Divide to try and get a retake on the site, and it wasn't like the Cosmic Divide in and of itself that won that for them, because Luminosity were perfectly happy to push through the Cosmic Divide to try and get a kill onto the player who's doing the defuse. But actually where Xel'Sys is positioned right next to that player with his gun up, because they know that Luminosity are going to push through, and he gets 2 kills for that and completely denies them the opportunity to deny that defuse. It's stuff like that that I thought was just really nice from version 1, and just like very notably Xel'Sys in particular, who was doing a really good job on that map.
Fair enough. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.